Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the European Parliament. My name is James Ellis, and I've very happily stepped in when Richard asked me to host this occasion, so we would have a platform to discuss what is a really topical issue. And for once, I think we're discussing at the right time and the right place to be able to hear people's views on a number of different questions which are on the agenda for us to address this morning. Already two of my colleagues, Edith Herzog, MEP, who will no doubt be speaking very shortly, I think, on budgets questions, and Maria de Graça Carvalho is also present, so very warm welcome to you both. I think you'll be discussing more on the excellence types of questions, but I guess like parliamentarians we'll be probably asked by Richard to intervene when he thinks we can make some critical remark which might enliven discussion. For myself, as a member of this Parliament since 1984 and being on the Budget Committee since then, I think on a tous vu tout ce qui peut se passer, but there are always surprises and one never quite knows in the budgetary field what happens, and we're entering into uncharted waters under the new Lisbon Treaty at the moment, as budgeteers amongst you will know. We had conciliation last week on the 2012 budget. It didn't work. Well, I mean, it was actually meant to be on the 2013, but we didn't even get as far as the amending budget on 2012, where an extra 9 billion is being requested by the Commission. And we don't quite know, but there's efforts being made amongst member states at the moment to seemingly cough up half that amount, but I'm not certain that that will be enough for the Parliament when the conciliation meets later today to decide. But remember, this is on the amending budget for the 2012 budget. That's for this year. 2013 is another story, as they say, where discussions are ongoing, but it does seem that we've run out of time under the 21 days which is given under the Lisbon Treaty to conclude. And therefore, I had a message, I think we all did, Edith, from the Budget Committee Chair this morning, of saying he wasn't certain whether the conditions are now met for us to continue discussing the 2013. So in this particular light, I just wanted to say that when we are discussing about large chunks of money for 2014 to 2020, let us not be too dewy-eyed and rose-tinted spectacles and expect there's going to be a magic wand and suddenly everybody's going to agree, because I don't see that being the case. On the contrary, I think that it could well be that when we have the big discussions in the European Council in a few days' time, that the differences between different delegations, whether it is to have a real term freeze, as some member states had agreed some time ago, but maybe some don't agree with that anymore, and with others, which are the majority around the Council table who would like to benefit from more funds, that agreement in the Council will be difficult to find. My own position, though, I think, is that we've seen very little, if any, coverage of what the Lisbon Treaty actually says under Article 312, which says, and I think I had a copy of my blog with it, now Edith has that, which says under Article 312 that it's actually a decision which has to be agreed on by the European Parliament after obtaining the consent which will be given by a majority of its component members. And that is a weighted majority as decided by the legal service of the Parliament. It's very difficult to see where you get that kind of majority in the European Parliament for the proposals which the Cyprus presidency is putting out at the present time. And therefore I think that in this kind of discussion where we can debate the merits of spending. It's been my view, as I expressed, Richard, at a meeting which you had a few months back and over a year ago, that more money is very unlikely. Therefore, the emphasis is actually going to be on how you spend existing money better, looking at the questions of excellence, of making sure that we really spend our money where you get value for money, rather than thinking that there are going to be huge sums of money around which don't exist in the public's exchequers, either, by the way, on this side of the Atlantic or on the other. And if I was asked to predict what was going to happen, I'm beginning to think that the favoured solution of our General Rapporteur, Reimer Böge, as a kind of fallback, will actually be no decision at all, and we will be there looking at a rollover for the next couple of years and then have a 5-year framework, 2015-2020, rather than a 7-year, because actually lying at the back of, and I end on this, lying at the back of many of us in the Budget Committee is that 7 years is an awfully long time to decide on what you should be putting in your budget for 2019, 2020, when most people don't even know how they're going to fill up their budgets for 2013 or 2014. And maybe just a pause to have a look of what we're doing with terms of value for money spend on a whole range of stuff, including this vital area on Horizon 2020, is also going to be critically important. So, Richard, having said one or two things which may be one or two people would disagree with, then hand it maybe through you to Edith or to Maria or anybody else who would wish to kick it off into your hands.
Grasso, before you come in, just thank you, James, very much. And yes, of course, no, it's totally uncontroversial, this entire discussion. I just wanted to say, first off, welcome to all of you. Welcome to those of you watching online right now as well. The turnout for both in the room and online is very good. Which reflects, as James, you said, the timeliness of the event. This is, I should just say, an event of the Science Business Network, for which we thank James for hosting very much. This was at the door. It is our free journalism of our own analysis of what's going on with Horizon 2020. And the reason that I waive it is simply that we are making a very deliberate effort through this event and through our reporting to emphasize the role in the Parliament in these discussions. And so that is what this event is about, to have the Parliament, key members of the Parliament speaking with us now about what they think will happen and what they think should happen. For those of you, what we're going to do is there are basically three topics on the table. Number one is the budget, and James, you've already opened the festivities. Number two is who will benefit from it, basically the rules of participation. And number three, individual programs. What are we going to do with the money? Those are the three things. We'll be organizing this discussion, starting here with the MEPs for each of the three topics and then broadening it to you and to the audience. I must say we have an email address for those of you online. If you would like to send in questions, we will read questions from online. Live at sciencebusiness.net, live at sciencebusiness.net, and Twitter at hashtag H2020EP for European Parliament. So, there we go. James, you already began the budget discussion. I'm going to turn first to Edith, who has been working on the multi-annual financial framework. Edith Herzog, you have been a key member of the ITRE committee, and you are working on these many issues. So would you care to begin? And then Grasso, I know you wish to come in also on this very well. And then Philippe Lambert, I believe you probably also have a view on it. I would be surprised if not. So go ahead.
Thank you, Richard, to invite me for the conference, and thanks, James, to host this very important event. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks to being here and listen to us. And I do ask you already that if you agree with us, go and speak, go and tell. We are in the critical moment where the Minister of Finance and the Prime Ministers of the countries have to get our messages, because only that's the way we can get the resources we would need in the November European Council. The first statement by me is that we have to recognize that with austerity alone we cannot achieve our goals. I keep telling in many conferences my favorite quotation, which is that nothing gives you more hope in your life than the first 24 hours of diet. You stop eating and you hope. And that's what Europe does. But we are at the end of the first 24 hours. With austerity alone, you cannot do it. You need to make a sport. And the sport for Europe has to be an exercise around innovation, around industrial policies, and around any policies which can provide growth and jobs. So growth and jobs policies are actually our exercises, our sport, which we have to do beside the diet. One of the big discussions with the Council already this budget in a certain way, because in the last and this financial framework, more than 50% of the European income is coming from the direct payment from the European countries. And it's a problem because we spend far more time how we collect the money instead of discussing how wise we wish to spend the money. So the Parliament is very keen to change the game and get the own resources, because that's the only way we can get rid of that part of the debate, how we collect the money, and we can concentrate more how we wish to spend the money wisely. In the European Parliament, we agree that the minimum amount we wish to get is the Commission proposal from last June. This is what we want to keep. And if we are looking for the Chapter 1A, and namely for Horizon 2020, then the number which we keep telling is the 80 billion plus. What is 80 billion plus? And is 80 billion is more than the actual 7 framework program? Actually, is not a real increase, as we say, compared to FP7, because there is a small increase, but there is a large increase in the scope. Innovation is under the scope, and for instance, defence research is under the scope, and many other small items which we were very happy to vote in when we defined the policies, but now we have to get the financial resources for the old policies, for these new babies, and there are some growing babies. I give you one example, for instance, EIT. EIT was a new baby, somewhere in between, but now if we wish to grow it, then we have to get financial resources. So for the Parliament, it's very clear that the 80 billion for Horizon 2020 is a minimum amount. And why is plus? Why is 80 plus? What is in the plus? In the plus, we have a dream to have more than 80 billion. We know that it will not work, but we still have this opinion. Plus, we have ITER and GMES. So ITER and GMES counts together additional around 14.5, 15 billion euros.
Edith, remind people what ITER and GMES is.
ITER is the fusion research and the institution in Cadarache, the thermonuclear plant in Cadarache, and the GMES is the satellite program, space policy of Europe. The two together count around 14 billion euro. And we say that it has to be above the 80 billion. So this is why 80 billion plus. What is in the last negotiation box in the Council? Because we have to see it as well. First, they have said in June that they wish to go down to 60 billion. In the last Cypriot meeting, informal meetings, they said 60 billion minus. And the 60 billion minus is very interesting, because what is in minus? In the minus, they put ITER and GMES in. So 60 minus this 14, 15 billion, so it's 45. And 45 minus because they wish to cut more. So that is I'd like to put it very clear here. The Council position is 45 minus. The Parliament position is 80 plus. That's the small difference we have to close with the gap if we can. I think it's very easy. I put here the Council. In my opinion, being responsible for the dossier, and these are not monkeys, these are cats, because I love cats, the Council is not ready to see the real need for growth and jobs in Europe, and we want to get them to see it. They do not listen at this moment. What do we say? And what the young generation mostly says, that they wish to get the jobs in those industries which are under competitiveness. And they are not ready to tell honestly what they say, because they do not say the 45 billion, they say 60 minus, but when you look at the details, then the real number is 45 minus. So this is what we wish to close.
For those of you who are too far back to see it, Edith is wearing 3 badges, okay. One that says, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. Speaking to the Council, I guess.
Yes. They're cats, not monkeys.
But they are cats.
They are cats,
not
yeah.
monkeys.
Is that more flattering to the Council than monkeys?
At least more kind.
Graça Carvalho, you are also a member of ITRE. You're one of the rapporteurs on Horizon 2020, and you have a long background in, for instance, former Portuguese science minister, and also a director in the Bureau of European Policy Advisors with the President. And so, please, Graça.
Thank you very much, Richard. Thank you, and congratulations for the organizing of this event, and also to my colleague Alice for hosting this event. I'm also a member of the Budget Committee, and in the EPP I have the responsibility to follow all the science, innovation, and also the energy and the environment relate with the budget. and space. So first I would like to talk about a point that James Ellis has also talked and clarify one thing. For the Parliament, we want to completely separate the discussion of the budget 2013 and the amendment budget of 2012 from the discussion of the next budget, the next financial perspectives. So on Friday we had a meeting, a very long meeting. I'm part also of the EPP delegation on that meeting, and we will have a continuation today on the amendment budget 6, amendment budget for 2012, and the budget of 2013. And in our opinion, we should agree on the amendment budget 6 before on the 2013, but separate that from the future budget. And the fact that we didn't find an agreement is mainly due that we are there is still some uncertainties on the numbers that have been presented by the Commission for some of the amendment budget, some of the chapters of the amendment budget 6. Of course that the general situation doesn't help to find an agreement, but has been a very technical discussion, and I would mix this up with the future budget. So we should separate from the discussion on the future budget. Another point on the future budget, what is discussed on the Council is the position of the Council. We cannot forget that there are 3 main institutions, European institutions, on this discussion, the European Parliament and the European Commission, and the European Parliament and the European Commission have a very similar position and different position from the Council. And the final position is going to be a negotiation between the 3. And this is different since the Lisbon Treaty. And we have to find an agreement on the budget. And in our position, Edith Herzog has already defined the major lines of the European Parliament position on the future budget. We have a report that was largely, it was the Garriga report, largely voted on in the European Parliament that says what is our position. We want a slightly increase compared with the position of the on the overall budget compared with the position of the Commission, and that increase is to have GMS and DTER inside the European budget and not taking money from other projects like Horizon 2020, and we compare with the proposal of the Commission. We would like to see an increase of budget in the areas that are more that have an impact, a direct impact on growth, and one of them is Horizon 2020. So we would like to see Horizon 2020 with more budget than the Commission has proposed. However, our would say red line is the proposal of the Commission, because the proposal of the Commission doesn't increase a lot compared with 2013. 2013 you have for FP7 11 billion euros, multiplied by 7 is 77. If we include the CIP and the EIT that were outside Horizon 2020, you have the number of the Commission. So what the Commission is proposing for Horizon 2020 is to keep the level, more or less to keep the level of financing of 2013. If we have a lower number compared with the Commission, we will have a decrease on investment on research compared with 2013. And very important, we have a much more ambitious program. Horizon 2020 is much more ambitious than FP7. We cover the whole cycle of innovation. We want to include demonstration on energy technologies that are crucial for Europe, on transport. We want in health, we have enlarged the scope of health. We want to include clinical trials, mainly on neglected disease, on diseases that are not treated by the private sector. These are very expensive. So if we do not have this value that we are requesting, or we don't accept. That is a possibility, the Parliament not to accept the proposal of the Council, and we keep going with the similar values on the budget of 2013, year by year, or we would have to redefine completely Horizon 2020. And we don't want to redefine Horizon 2020 because we are convinced that Europe needs a program like Horizon 2020. There is one entire pillar of Horizon 2020 devoted to industrial competitiveness, to make sure that Europe regains the industrial base that it needs through research and innovation. And this is very important for growth, is very important for jobs. A lot of politicians talk about a growth pact. Horizon 2020 is exactly the growth pact that we need for Europe. So I hope that in the end we have an adequate budget for Horizon 2020 agreed by Council, Commission and Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grâce. And next I turn to Philippe Lambert. He is a member of the Parliament from Belgium, Ecolo. And you are also a rapporteur, specifically on the EIT regulation. And your own background is in innovation. You were with IBM for many years.
Correct.
So go ahead.
Well, when I was at IBM, you know, when we had a business downturn, the first thing that got cut was travel. Nothing wrong about that. But the second thing that was cut was education. One might question the wisdom of doing such cuts. But the thing that was not cut was research and innovation. And I witnessed not only companies that in the downturn kept their R&D spending, I even witnessed companies that were increasing their spending on R&D in a crisis. Now, that's a question that basically Europe needs to face. Do we believe, collectively, that we Europeans are spending such a hell of a lot of money on research and innovation that we can afford to scale it back because we are hitting a downturn? On the contrary, and especially when you look at it from a competitiveness perspective, isn't it now the moment where we need to step up our efforts in research and innovation? You may recall that as part of the ancient Lisbon strategy, now EU 2020 strategy, we have not committed, but given ourselves an indicative target of 3% of GDP spent on research and innovation, 1% coming from public sector, 2% coming from private sector. Almost no EU member states is reaching that target, and we are, of course, not reaching it collectively. Do we believe it's really wise to base our competitiveness bid on the global scene on cost cuts and wage cuts? Do we believe that this is a race that, A, we can win against low-cost countries? Is it a race that we believe that we want to win? I'm just asking the question. I do not see Europe as becoming yesterday's China or today's Vietnam. Our ambition is elsewhere, right? And when especially China is climbing up the value chain, and I'm glad they do, isn't it the moment where we should say, well, we have some, we are ahead of them, but we want to keep our lead? Or do we just want them to catch up and then to overtake us in the capability to create value? You know, the top part of the competitiveness equation. Well, we believe, as Greens, that this is what we need to go for. And it's a matter of survival for Europe's economy, Europe's welfare model, Europe's prosperity. So there's no question, as far as we are concerned, that yes, we need to shift much more private and public funding, private and public both, from, well, what I would say back office, less value-creating activities to more value-creating activities, and research and innovation is absolutely key there. So there's no question there that this is a matter of survival. This needs to be done. And yes, the rewards are paying off over the long term. But then again, well, I agree that 7 years is a long time. and that the Chinese only do 5-year plans. That may be some reason for doing that. But at least the Chinese take a long perspective. And well, coming from a US multinational where the perspective was a quarter or even less than a quarter, when I see the time perspective that we have in Europe, which is more or less a year in European circles, well, I'm not sure that we are looking at the right time horizon. And of course, every time that we postpone investments in the future, well, we postpone the returns. And we may make the returns out of reach, because the fact that you delay closes a number of doors. So again, it's a matter of urgency that we step up significantly our research and innovation investments. And yes, that means hard choices, taking money away from other activities, because there's only so much wealth available to do stuff. So these are hard choices. And of course, every politician wants more for his pet projects or her pet projects, but few of us dare say, okay, let's do less of this, that, and that, because that, of course, hurts vested interests. So there's no question we need to do that. Now, the question is, how are we going to do that? Is money spent at regional, national level delivering more value for money than money spent together at European level? That's the question we need to answer. And there may be cases where, well, critical mass is reached at member state level or even at regional level. And some of our regions, think of North Rhine-Westphalia, that's bigger than the Netherlands. So there may be cases where in some areas you get better value for money at lower levels than Europe. But I would argue that when you are in competition with, say, the United States or China or Brazil or India, well, I think that it's a bit wrong to consider ourselves, who are no more than 7% of the global population. I just want to remind you of that. And basically, the wealth of research and innovation is people first. Well, I think that there's a good case for saying, well, we better do a significant part of our effort together at European level. So I'm not claiming more money for the EU budget, for the EU research and innovation budget, because I happen to be a member of the European Parliament and, well, I want to pull money my way. It is because I sincerely believe that, on average, we are doing a better job by pooling our efforts, at least then in a number of areas where we want to become leaders. I mean, when you look at the challenges of this century, these are quite simple. Are we able to provide the basic conditions for a decent life to everyone? And that's health, that's social cohesion, there's a lot of stuff. And can we do that within the physical limits of our environment? And that's tough. That's not easy, because solutions for that are really hard to find. We believe that we can, because, well, we have a history in those domains, we can become world leaders into that. Well, that would be, as far as we are concerned, where we should put the focus. But yes, there's a good case for doing that, but that implies hard choices. And I would tend to react to what you said about, well, maybe ultimately we will delay the hard decisions for another 2 years and then go for a 5-year perspective. Well, if we can really use those 2 years to have that really factual and political debate about where is money better spent, can we build a consensus that it is not, I want my money back, but this is, together, we are creating more value for money, because this should be the key argument towards our citizens. We are going to spend public money. We want this to deliver as much value as possible. And if we can use those 2 years to build such a case, I would be for it. I would say, okay, rather than do quick and dirty bad choices, let's try to build also a popular consensus across Europe that, yes, these are things that we need to do. Now, a last word, just a last word, if I may, on ITER. This is typically, as far as we are concerned, white elephants, which try to solve something. Well, you know, I'm an engineer. When I was graduating 30 years ago, they told me we might have a working prototype for nuclear fusion in 50 years' time. Today, my fellow engineers are telling me we might have a working prototype in 50 years' time. But when you look at those 50 years, just assuming they're right this time, we have a number of challenges. Well, climate change, resource exhaustion, will be there before 50 years. And so the question is, do we want to spend such a big part of our money on such a white elephant, which, by the way, we seem, Europeans, to be the last ones believing in. When I see how other partners are scaling down their commitment or not scaling them up according to the budget evolution, that's a signal to me. So I would...
Philippe, yes, if we can, let's come to the nuclear issue in just a moment, because we've also just been joined by Peter Skinner, a member of the Parliament from the United Kingdom, and also the rapporteur, as it would happen, for atomic research under Horizon 2020. Now, that's not specifically ITER, but it's the atomic issue. But wait a minute, Peter, and you might want to join in on the debate that we've begun here. I've heard two of the members say emphatically that there must be more money, period. 80 plus, you said, you made an argument, Grasse, for much more. Philippe, you started to make an argument for more, and then you said, well, you might accept the possibility of a short-term postponement of the decision for 2 years. But what about this issue? I mean, would a 5-year plan be politically more acceptable, easy?
Maybe, though, we should have a look first at what we're spending money on, exactly. And then, because that's the substance of the issue, I think, and I'd appreciate if those, Richard, who'd like to come into our debate, so it's not just a one-way communication. Particularly, though, if you look at the debate on the CEF, the Connecting Europe Facility, it looks as if many spirits in the Council would like just to see this thing disappear altogether. And yet, if I pick up on what Edith was saying about jobs and growth, I think we both would agree, coming from the Internet Foundation side of things, that money well spent is in, I don't say because you're with IBM, but ICT stuff. If you invest every €1, you're going to get about 20 euros back, where if you put it in railways, you get 2 back. What's the sign that we seem to be spending more on rail and on aircraft is that the lobby for digital and for innovation is much too weak in the lobbying process to make sure that people at the top of the system understand that's where our money is best spent to get the economy moving again.
Peter?
Well, I think, Philippe invites me to get involved into a controversy I'm going to try and avoid. But I would say, what's the point of science? What's the point of nuclear physics? What's the point of putting money in investing in space or, other, if you like, equally controversial areas? We do so because, we have an aim about what we want to see, and it has amazing consequences for our human society, not least the fact that we could possibly find some of the biggest life-changing events that could occur for our world. It's worth hoping for, if not working towards. I don't think, actually, Philip would deny the opportunity. He's pointing out the practicalities, I suspect, although obviously inside your own particular political doctrine there is an element which sort of says hostility towards nuclear fission, at least. So I can understand how that might actually interfere in the development of fusion too. So although we can't afford always to be cynical, we have to recognise there are barriers, there are limits. The budgetary limits of the EU are very well pronounced. We do have some concerns how we will spend money on science. It's to say also that, frankly, what the EU is spending on science isn't the full limit of what we spend on science. National member states will still spend money on science, will host, will develop, will actually bring scientists together. But we can only do that in the prism of knowing that actually science is important enough for us to actually invest in. Without that, of course, that science will go elsewhere. The problem is the development, if you like, in areas like nuclear physics, particularly on fusion, has reached a pinnacle at European level. There are other countries that won't embark on this, that didn't want to embark on this, because Europe is taking the lead, frankly, and they're putting their resources, their hopes, and their scientists here in the projects that we're developing. So, yeah, it's increasingly the case that when you take leadership and you look for direction, that you will be perhaps the sole provider of that direction. We will have to carry the burden for that. Now, when it comes down to the budget, I defer slightly to James and to Edith to some degree. Although this is a Euratom case, it's a treaty, the member states will actually be involved quite openly in what's going on. We will only have an opinion. But by the budgets, we are committed to actually providing the funding for this. As a parliament, we can't say we stop the funding for that. We can obviously challenge the budget as a whole, but Edith may disagree, but I suspect that you cannot challenge what was already in a treaty outside of the current structure of the EU. We don't have the kind of consultative rights as we do in other aspects of legislation within inside the European space. So, it's important to make that distinction, first of all, to say not all controversy is deserved, that some elements of it are actually important for science, and whilst there is disagreement, there is still also hope that we will be able to find something which may work.
Okay. Graça, I understand that you have to go to a party meeting at the moment, so would you like to make a comment before that, and then we'll continue this discussion, if that's all right?
I apologize because in the EPP they are going to discuss exactly Horizon 2020 and budget for Horizon 2020, so I need to be there.
Can you tweet to us what happened after?
And but first, I want to comment on this question of the 2 years plus 5, and I regret to have to say this to my good friend James Ellis, but we have been discussing the budget and the European Parliament report, Garriga report, for the last 2 years or more, and we had at that time a lot of different scenarios, 5 years, 3 plus 3. At that time, we had we have discussed and we have chosen the 7 years, we have voted the 7 years. I think that is a bit too late for restarting this discussion, and is something that Europe does need now to be distract from the major issues that we have in front of us, that is to fight the crisis. And to fight the crisis we need a budget, a European budget, because for many countries the European budget is the solely public investment that there is available. Like in my own, the only investment in research and innovation is through the structural funds and the funds that they get to the framework program. So what would happen if it's 2 plus 2 years? What would happen to FP7? We will continue 2 years because it's a new program. FP7 is going to finish and we will start a new program, Horizon 2020. So it's something that this uncertainty that Europe does need and distracts our attention. So we should put all our efforts, is my opinion, in to have an adequate budget. Of course, we need to take the reality of the countries and the crisis, but we should have an adequate budget with simple rules, flexible, and we have to have the courage to make choice, only to choose the areas that have impact in growth and jobs. And there, yes, we should concentrate to do the right priorities for Europe. Before going, I would like to enter in the second topic that you have listed in your questions, that is who should participate, because we have made an effort on Horizon 2020 and it's something that we have added in the Parliament, and I'm very proud that in the Parliament we have added this notion of widening participation while keeping excellence as the sole criteria, and excellence is defined without any geographical condition. We are saying that there is excellence across Europe, and the criteria and the Horizon 2020 should be designed in a way that will be able to capture the small sprouts of excellence, the small startups, the small research groups, the small groups inside universities, and there exist all over Europe, not only in the regions with a lot of critical mass of excellence. And this is a concept that we have including, that probably is easy to announce, is not so easy to put in practice, but we have included many actions where this is translated in very pragmatic actions, and there is a new part of Pillar 1 of excellence that is called widening, of participation, and where we have return grants, error shares, twinning, so a number of schemes that gives body to this concept of the stairway to excellence. Another topic that we have included in the Parliament, and I'm very also proud of this, is this multi-fund approach, that we should link Horizon 2020 with other funds, exactly because we have big challenge in front of us, the whole cycle of innovation. The demonstration projects are very expensive, and we have to join efforts with other funds, mainly the structural funds, but not only. With private funds, with other European programs, LIFE, European Development Fund, if there is some projects with developing countries. And we have make rules easy to have this join of funds. And for example, with the structural funds, we are saying that they should be complementary with Horizon 2020 to act upstream for capacity building and downstream helping to commercialize and to helping co-finance the late stage of the innovation chain, the demonstration, the industrial demonstration, and the early phase of commercialization, because this is, most of the time, this is local, is regional, so the regional funds can help the Horizon 2020 to cover the whole cycle of innovation. So it's these two comments that I would like to add, and I apologize that I have to leave you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Garza. Can we, I believe there were a few more comments on the budget issue that wanted to be, and then let's take a few questions from you as well, and then we'll go to the next topic. So please, go ahead.
Yeah.
And
30
Edith,
seconds on the budget.
Excuse me, actually, Philippe, Edith did say first.
No, took Philip. He loves to speak. No. I will tell the numbers at the end.
Edith, go ahead.
No.
Please.
Oh, it's all right. It's all right, I can stay. First, do we need additional 2 years to discussion? I think we have got these 2 years because after the Euratom Treaty has ended, we had a similar discussion in the year 2012 and year 2013 budget, at least, how do we wish to finance ITER. So the discussion was quite similar. I think in the 2 years the Parliament was very clear what we stand, and the Commission as well. I think unless we get rid of the first debate, that the 73% of the income comes from the ministers of finance, this is the real challenge rather than the other one, which I have mentioned in the beginning. The second, I'd like to clarify something as a simple thinker woman. If the European budget would disappear, we still would need to have the money for ITER, because there is a signed contract by the member states. So the EU budget would not make it disappear. The signatures are on the contract, and I think it's a good thing that the signatures are on the contract. So what is then the question? I think the European Commission and the European Parliament accepted to have ITER inside the EU budget. But if it would be outside, member states still would need to finance it. So we cannot decide about to have it or not to have it. If it's in the EU budget, with the signed signature, with the signed contract, then it's a very rigid money. We have to spend the money on it. Yeah? We have no choice to cut it or increase it, because then you have to build it somehow. Yeah? So I think it's a very, very important to know. So what we say, yes, we accept ITER, but we need the money for ITER being in the European budget, and we need an envelope for ITER where the money is placed. Because we know from the last 2 years how difficult it was to gather the money from the different envelopes. And why we do that? Not only because it's difficult, but because we want to save money for Horizon 2020, because we think that those issues are planned there, are important and necessary to do so. So in that way, we need to separate the mice from the elephants. Yeah, if the elephant called ITER is dancing in the same dancing room with the small mice called EIT, or a small mice like COSME, which is outside of innovation, then of course it will be very, very difficult. So we need an envelope, we need the money, and we need a flexibility. And yes, we are very clear about this as a Parliament. I think the Commission is not so clear about it, that if there is money remaining in the other chapters, The money should not go back to the member states as it does today, but it has to go to research and innovation and for ITER and for those projects which will make a game change. Philip already compared to the global world that how we wish to compete with China and how we wish to compete with the United States. But the question we have to raise ourselves, if we continue everything like we did, can we make it or not? So we have to compare it with the existing financial framework. And we know that we need a change. It's very clear we need a change. So once again, the Parliament will be very clear about it. We need the money for Horizon 2020. We need an independent envelope for ITER with the money inside. And we think it's in the right place because the overrun costs cannot be forgotten. And the overrun costs are, again, a big elephant in this dancing room. We know it from the previous years. And we want to go with the excellence and with widening the participation. I think it's very clear what the Parliament wants, and that's my role to play. What you can do if you wish to save money for Horizon 2020, you have to make sure that your Minister of Finance and your Prime Minister is agreeing that ITER has to come along with the independent envelope. If it's not the case, you will have the high risk that sooner or later this elephant will dance on you. And finally, it's a political statement on ITER. I would not be here without ITER, because ITER is a political project started in '85 in Reykjavik. That was when the contract was signed between Gorbachev and Reagan about the START program, about the nuclear, get rid of the nuclear programs. And I stand for the end of the Cold War. I stand for the word out of the nuclear bomb. So for me, ITER has a very strong symbol of those two. And it's one more reason, beside that I believe the need, that I will support this project.
Philippe?
Well, Edith, with all due respect, I don't think that ITER has a lot to do with the end of the Cold War. I don't think that it's ITER who brought it about. I really don't believe that. I think that it was the revolution of the people on your side of the Iron Curtain that made it happen, and not ITER. So, ITER, I'll just say one thing. If this project had to be judged by the criteria of a well-run company, it would already have been killed long time ago. Long time ago. This is poor management, simply. Now, on the budget, 30 more seconds. I agree with Maria that there's urgency, so why should we wait another 2 years? But I would say that my choice is very pragmatic. If the choice is between a compromise now, based on the current bargaining that is going on in the Council, that actually reduces research and innovation spending, or a chance to continue on the current path and then increase it 2 years down the road, my choice is for the latter. Now, if we can ramp up early, fine. But frankly speaking, I am not seeing yet the constellation that will bring this to reality.
I would like to just make one fundamental democratic point about the decision-making on budgets. I've sat in the Budget Committee since 1984. The only financial perspective which was proposed by President of the Commission, over which that Commission had some effect, was in 1988 to 1992. Ever since then, financial perspectives have been decided by 7 years, 92, 99, 2000, 2006, 2007, 2013, and now 2013, 2020. The actual Commission which has to implement the financial has no say on the financial framework. That must be fundamentally wrong in any type of democracy where you have now a big debate opening out on banking union, for fiscal union, political union, European elections. We're going to do things. Oh, no, sorry. Yeah. We've got a financial framework which is stuck till 2020. That is fundamentally wrong, and that's what we have to, I think, in the Parliament realise. There are much bigger issues than whether it's one programme or another, and we need to stick and make sure the system in the Union runs democratically and transparently.
Peter.
Well, Philip, you can't blame him sometimes for saying what he's saying, when he just throws it out there, bad management. You have to sort of challenge it and sort of say, well, the ITER project or the JET project, for example, has got some proven results in terms of the fields of science and development of what it's achieved. A lot of science is like that. It's not run necessarily as a business with a direct end which has some degree of purpose as a business has. So we have to be clear about the objectives we set for this project. It's a far more fundamental and far-reaching objective than just running it as a business. And it's strange to hear it from a Green, but there you go. I mean, I think that when we're talking about the budgets, let's be clear that we have priorities which we want to impress upon the Commission and others, especially the Council, about what we'd like to see. And I'm really grateful that Edith keeps reminding us of her commitment towards this, because she will have to find the money for this. She's the one who's now got the responsibility to make sure that ITER, infrastructure and science comes through. I've had to place a lot of trust in her because she's our negotiator for the ITER committee inside the Budgets Committee. I think the reality is it tells me that it's getting very worrying. So, I can stay up late at night, but knowing only that Edith's going to rescue us, I think, from this. Consequence of which might be that actually other areas of the EU budget might have to get pinched, because this is the way the Council's moving. I mean, do we want to see structural funds getting reduced? Do we want to see spending in social expenditure reduced? What do we want to see pinched elsewhere? Common agricultural policy would be a very good place to start, frankly, given waste and bad management. If you want bad management, 38% of the budget of the European Union is literally thrown away. Now, how can we expect that? Also, there's net contributors and net receipts. And in reality, some of the countries that are behind the ITER project are net contributors, massively so, massively so. And the ones who are perhaps pushing to say, well, we need to have the budget extended to the mice in the room, are sometimes only the net receivers. And in that respect, of course, we need to establish the balance in this game, and that's what's happening in Council. So you can't forego those arguments at the same time and just simply say, look, it's a simple arithmetical game, just because the Council didn't say that they were going to fully fund it when they originally thought of the idea. We have some logic to apply to this, and I'm expecting the Budget Committee to apply that logic and come through and Edith to win the day.
Thank you. Questions? Question, comment? Yes. Please identify yourself.
Thanks, Rich. Somebody has to start. Kurt de Ketelaar, Secretary General of LERU, the League of European Research Universities. Well, I don't know how many people in the room here are already convinced, so it's always very difficult to preach for the converted. But I think that with the budget discussions coming up in the final phase, I think there is much more at stake than just the research budget or the agriculture budget, whatever. I think that what is at stake is in fact the credibility and the reliability of the EU institutions, I would say. If I look to the many policy declarations made by the Council over the past years, and within LERU we had a look at them in the past days, if I look at the many policy declarations in which they say how important research and innovation is for Europe, then obviously it would be quite a disappointment if next week they would come up with an enormously reduced budget. Secondly, I would say that certainly within LERU, we are looking very much in the direction of the Parliament, in a sense that on the basis of what I heard here this morning, Mrs. Herzog, Mrs. Carvalho, Mr. Lamberts, etc., this is all very promising, but I hope that the Parliament will stay put, and that once the Council has taken a decision which is absolutely contradictory to what we all hope, that the Parliament then will make use of its democratic and constitutional powers in order to make sure that this Council decision doesn't go through, and that they fight for a budget which is credible for research and innovation in Europe. At the end of the day, both institutions have to approve the same text. So we put all our hope on the Parliament, I would say. And if we make, in fact, a kind of sum up of everything that is going on, and if we look around in the world, well, I see in Europe national budgets for research and innovation going down in most of the countries. I see the very limited success of joint programming initiatives and pooling of national research money. I now see that half of the EU research budget, which was proposed by the Commission and which is just a status quo, now also risks to be halved. Well, then I predict to you, going around this world on an almost daily basis, going to China, going to the States, going to Australia, and see how research and innovation policy is run over there, that this is for Europe the start of the end. It's out of the end. We all have to be aware that a time where 27 national research and innovation budgets could be significant, could mean something, that this time is absolutely and completely over. We only are going to survive this if we pool national money together and if we make sure that there is a decent EU budget for research and innovation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kurt. Before we respond to this, can we take one question from the Internet? Marilyn Fiaschi, a director of our company, you've got tweets and emails, I think. So give us a question and then we'll come.
All right, so we received a number of questions already. There is, for instance, one question from the UK. Does Horizon 2020 change the balance between backing research and innovation? Is there more money for knowledge transfer?
That is from who?
From the UK.
In response to either of these points.
Well, on the first question, saying that the institutions, the EU institutions' credibility is at stake, I would agree with you, and I completely agree. I think that what you said pretty well coincides with what I said in my open remarks. I just want to stress one point, is that of course you can blame the European institutions for not putting their money where their mouth is. Problem is, we do not earn the money. The money is coming from member states. And this is why in this whole MFF perspective, well, multi-annual financial framework perspective, the issue of own resources is so capital, because then we can decide to spend the money as we see fit. Of course, the Council still co-decides, but there's a different, well, negotiating relationship when actually we are discussing about money that one of the two partners doesn't own in the first place. So this is a crux where we are, and I would tend to agree with you that this is something that we need to change. Now, in the research versus innovation shift, again, indeed, yeah, if we look at the total picture, there's a gradual shift of the center of gravity. I would like to stress that I'm still pretty convinced that we need to do as much as possible in fundamental research, because if you are not present along the chain, you lose your innovation capacity. That's clear. But to me, the whole chain includes manufacturing. If you believe that you can be the brains and you outsource manufacturing, well, those who manufacture will innovate and then will climb the chain from the other end. And this is already happening. So if we don't keep a very strong manufacturing base here in Europe, we are doomed as well. So to me, I'm looking at the whole chain, which doesn't mean that we want to weaken the basic research part, but actually we want to grow the whole pot of money so that we can continue to do fundamental research and expand into the innovation industrial side. One last point on that. I think also that in terms of funding rates, we have to be smart. We, I'm speaking for the Greens, want the leverage effect of the public money to be as high as possible, which means that we want, for €1 public European money that we spend, we would like to see other euros coming from either other levels of government or the private sector or the private sector. By the way, if you are spending 100% of the money, that may be an indication that no one else believes in what you are working on. So that's not a good sign. So in that sense, I would say that the further you get towards the market side of the equation, the lowest the contribution of public money there should be, because the profit potential is getting higher. So I would say that we have to strike the right balance there, but leverage is absolutely key.
Could I come to the point? Actually, Peter, you raised this point, though. You were saying that these are tight times on the budget, and so there has to be priorities taken as to what gets saved and what gets not saved. Could I just ask you, I mean, all right, what would you cut?
Yes. One question about this issue about communications, which I don't think was answered. We talk about conferences, spread of events, perhaps, those kinds of things, because, you know, fundamentally, I don't think we want to necessarily be involved in spending a large amount of money on that, although I think knowledge transfer is important. You know, there are ways and routes of doing that, perhaps through using, as Philippe's demonstrated just now, other uses of public resources where universities will agree to sponsor certain events, etc., etc. But, I mean, classically, again, it isn't about a battle between fundamental science and innovation close to market. It shouldn't be about that. It should be both. I agree with Philip on this. But on the leveraging issue about when you put investment in as public sector investment, and this is a tiny really, as a fraction of what's needed if we're to actually develop a growth and jobs agenda based upon innovation close to the marketplace, we're not likely to see that leveraging coming in unless the governments themselves have the confidence to put the money in the first place. And that is the critical issue. So when it comes back to budgets, you know, this is where a lack of faith in science and innovation and technology is really becoming manifest and becoming very dangerous for the sphere, has been mentioned, of advancing science and technology.
Thanks very much for your question. I'd like to disagree with you because it's nothing to do with the European institutions. The European institution, the Commission and the Parliament is standing for more Europe, for more research and for more young generation issue. We go for digital, we go for step change in energy, in industrial policy and so on. So there is a bottleneck, and the bottleneck is the 27 Minister of Finance and their government who cut in the Cypriot presidency last meeting, the research and innovation by 11%, the agriculture by 3%, the cohesion policy by 3%, and you cannot read it in none of the newspapers. They did not announce in their countries that they are going to do so. If you disagree with this trend, please pick up the phone, pick up your voice and tell that you disagree with. It's nothing to do with the European institutions. The European institution will finally and ultimately deal with the budget which the member states put together. This is the moment when we get the ownership. And when we get the ownership, with the codecision procedure, we will go line by line. This is why the European Parliament is not ready to say a word on the Council decision when they put the money together, because we want to see where the Council wishes to cut. Yeah, so we go by line, and we do line by our priority list. This is why we start with Horizon 2020 in the Parliament. Yeah? And then we do agree by line, and then we go back to the first table, to that table. Yeah? It's very clear what we want. We want to get money for research. We want to get the large infrastructure projects saved on their own with money with the envelope, and we need flexibility that where is the overrun issue doesn't come back to the research. This is what we want. And once again, it's not a growth. It's just to keep what we have got. It will not be able to replace the budget cuts at the national level. We have to be very clear about it. It's another problem, and it's another promise which the member states have to do, because it simply cannot be on democratic level that you promise more and you do nothing or you do less. This is exactly what the European Parliament is asking. And if you help us to ask the same question back at home, you help us a lot in the next coming negotiations.
Richard, can I just ask
Yes.
you, it's very simple, what would you cut personally in terms of trying to make this budget work then? Because there's a responsibility. Yeah, because there's a responsibility inside the Parliament. I'm not advocating, you know, nobody wants to advocate cuts, but the Council is. And where's the Parliament on this? It's sticking by its, you know, it's agreed stance. Hang on, it's agreed stance, which is we need an increase in the budget and we're not willing to shrink back from it. But if we got down to negotiations on this, without revealing too much, which areas would you choose to do in terms of making these cuts or freezes?
Peter, you know, it's a very right and good question, but not in the good time. Because before November, I do not wish to give advices to the member states why are already accept the cuts. They have to tell what they wish to give, and then we can think about our priority list together with them. Anything which I would say now, they would take it as an already agreed cut. So I cannot go to that direction.
So you want to keep your poker hand hidden then?
I must, because it's your interest.
There have been many efforts in the annual budget processes which we have tried to be able to understand from our colleagues what are negative priorities. And we've had nice phrases in our resolutions, but there's been nothing specific which has come out as to where those negative priorities, because there are always different lobbies pushing different particular points. But if you're looking at the two major elements in the system, there's agriculture. That's gone down significantly in the last two financial perspectives, and there's the structural funds. And I think it's the structural funds which we need to look at in greater detail, because we're spending a lot of money, but we're not actually what I would like to see digitalizing these structural funds to bring them up to modern-day expenditure, which is really going to give jobs and growth when you have public investment.
Well, 3 years ago I was still in business, so I'm
You still are
maybe
in business, but a different kind.
well, different kind of business. But so I will be probably a bit blunter, and well, some things that I'm going to say will please you, some others not. I think that if we look at the three big pots of money, so agricultural policy, structural funds, and research, starting with agricultural policy, my view is that if we keep the current structure of agricultural policy, which basically means the bulk of the money flowing to big agro-business, I would cut significantly. Significantly. So unless this becomes a catalyst for the transformation of our agriculture, the budget should be significantly scaled down. Significantly. That's my position. It is not widely shared in my own group, because we all have the same kinds of lobbies and no one is better placed than another here. But I believe that either we go for a systemic transformation of agricultural policy or we scale it down significantly. On structural funds, I would say that we have different situations. I can perfectly understand that parts of that money, significant parts of that money, still go to basic infrastructure in a number of member states. If you go to Poland, even a Green will admit that the road infrastructure in that country is not where it needs to be, even with a well-balanced mobility scheme. So I would still go for basic infrastructure, say, in well, what is still called the new member states, but no longer that new. But how is it possible that we still allow structural funds to go to such basic infrastructures? I mean, there's money, EU money going to roads in this country. This is crazy. This is completely crazy, as if we don't have enough of them. And there, again, is where we need to scale back significantly. Research, I would expand it, but I would kill a white elephant such as ITER. And then finally, the pot of money about the functioning of the EU. I would challenge those who say, well, EU is a big money waster compared to what? To local authorities in Belgium or in Germany, so even developed countries, or member states' administrations? No. But can someone claim that we cannot do better with the money we have? Well, having been 3 years in this parliament, I believe that we can have a leaner operation. Of course, the most obvious thing is that we should stop going to Strasbourg, but even in our current day-to-day operation, even if we had only one site, I believe we can do more with the means that we have, or we should probably then accept, even symbolically, to, well, cap or even reduce the functioning expenditures of the EU institutions. Because frankly speaking, compared to national parliaments, we are well endowed. We have many assistants, we have released the staff we need to do work. And I would say that even if it's only symbolic, we have to show that we are prepared to operate in a leaner and meaner fashion moving forward. Now, I would also respond to what Peter said. Even if we argue, and there I'm with you, even if we argue for more money at European level, still we have to be prepared to shift money within the budget. That means cutting in places. I want to argue for a significantly higher EU budget. We are arguing for 5% of GDP, but then we have to earn the trust of our citizens and of our member states. And that means that we must show that we are prepared to shift money away from less value-creating activities to more value-creating activities. And that's a bit the political courage that it takes to be able then to have a very strong case to say, well, money spent in Europe gives more value for money than when it's spent at other levels of government.
Thank you. Another question from the internet, please.
A question from the UK, from Cornelia de Moore, University of
Nottingham. A big
Nottingham.
audience in the UK, apparently. All right.
Sorry, yeah. The question is, does the EU science funding have to be as bureaucratic as the framework programs? The obscure rules and regulation, the lack of transparency and of the award process and the reams of paperwork are putting many scientists off applying.
Yes, I fully agree with that. I've had a case in my own area in Oxfordshire where, because of the rules which were done and the way in which this was treated, he's very nearly out of business as having actually contributed. That's not exactly the kind of thing which one wants to be able to do. What we have tried to do in the reshaping of the financial regulation is to have a simplification of the way in which the rules are working, and I very much hope that that effort now, which will now be fed into the next stage of FP8, will now mean that people will be more encouraged to come in, because certainly the examples that I've heard are pretty horrifying in the way in which some of the bureaucracy has worked under the current programme.
Yes, I'd like to react on this because it's very, very important. If you go for simplification, then you should not forget that you open the door, and for the same amount of financial resources, more people will apply. So the competition will be even greater. First comment. The second comment, when you go for simplification, you need staff here in Brussels, because that means that some of the work you do there will be done here in Brussels. Therefore, we do not buy the idea of the Council to cut on the administrative chapter. We cannot cut more than 5% already agreed on the staff connected to the industry and research policies. That's my second comment. And the last and most important one, it was challenged, the structure and cohesion funds. I'd like to say that all the funds in the other chapters, being a cohesion, being a structural funds, being agriculture funds, we need to turn, might be not to cut or kill them, especially I cannot say it as coming from those new member states, but to put it to the first production facility building within Europe. What we see with the research and development in many fields, that we do the research and development in Europe, then the first production with the second wave of innovation goes in other third countries, and then we buy the product back as Europeans. What we want to do, research and development in Europe, based on excellence and with the widened participation, first production in other parts of Europe from cohesion and structural fund, namely the new member states where you have some competitive advantage, and having the markets inside Europe. That's how we can keep the money flow a bit more inside the European Union.
The Commission proposal is supposed to make Horizon 2020 simpler. Do you believe it? Is it going to be simpler?
Yes.
It's always a hard balance, because the same citizens who are asking for simplicity will also scream when they see that money has been ill spent or that has been fraudulent use. So there's always the issue of checks and balances, of controls and well, more freedom. And so what level of error do we tolerate, not just in the administration or in rules, but what is society prepared to accept in terms of simplification and the impacts of it in the execution of the program, because indeed simplification leads to probably less stringent procedures and possibly some mistakes being made. To me, I accept that there are mistakes. That's life. I mean, we are not living in a perfect world, and so I would tend to err on the side of more flexibility in the programs, but yet they need to be administered. And to me, it's always a question of benchmarking. Is R&D and innovation money spent at regional or national level in member states being spent in simpler programs? Is application simpler? Is execution, follow-up of the program simpler there? Well, in case there are good practices to be taken over, let's do that. But I'm more of a pragmatist there. I know that the very complexity of the program is an obstacle, but at least I know of one island of EU programs that has been integrated into Horizon 2020, the former Competitiveness and Innovation Programme, that has been targeting SMEs and that has been immensely successful at targeting SMEs. If they have been able to crack the code of working with SMEs, talking the language of SMEs, motivating SMEs, and basically, well, bringing seed money into the SME world, then probably that kind of business model can be expanded elsewhere in the program. That's what I hope.
Peter? And then a question from the floor. Just to say, actually, Framework 7 hasn't been fully spent yet. And when you think about exactly, I mean, billions still left. So when we're talking about, cutting budgets and increasing budgets, we should look at the efficiency, the difficulty in which people are able to make their applications work in this process to see whether or not, actually, we're going to really make any sense in this current range of doing things as well.
Okay. Question from the floor. Yes.
Thank you. I'm Ioan Ciumașu, Professor of Innovation at the University of Versailles in Paris. I would like to make a comment and then have your feedbacks on that. I feel that behind all this discussion is a matter of how research innovation, I mean the excellence, is seen within the populace of the countries. Because if politicians want to cut something, my feeling is that they want because they're afraid this is not accepted at home. So the matter of acceptability or the respect that research and innovation gets within each country among the population is essential. So I think this is what is missing here, because in the United States, for example, or in China, if you are a researcher, you are much more respected than in Europe. That's my feeling. Maybe I'm wrong, but some other people may comment on that. So I think that maybe the European institutions may stimulate the development of some networks, social networks of, let's say, recuperating the role of science and technology in society, but also autonomously, I would say that independently, scientists should just also organize themselves and trying to convince population that we are among the best, so respect us, something like that. What do you think?
Comment?
I'd like to react. Exactly this is why we ask for your help. If I'm a mother of 3. If I went to the kindergarten and I went to the primary school meetings, you know, gathering for mothers and parents, and I asked other mothers, what do you wish that your children would be? They were dreaming about being in science, being in these kind of jobs. So the populace is actually quite in favoring, even in that level, the science. And this is where we have a democratic deficit, that unfortunately in the Council, the decision makers are not even the full government. Yeah? And it's rarely, I cannot say any Minister of Finance in Europe who would have in its first 10 priority research and science. So this is why we have to enlarge this debate, and this is why the Parliament is quite sure that after we put the numbers on the table, we have to go for a large discussion involving as many citizens as we can, asking their opinion and pushing the number back to at least to do not decrease. This is what we want, and this is where we think that we are quite strong. But I'm alone, I cannot do it. I need all of you, and I need the 500 million citizens dreaming about having better life, better jobs, and growth for these coming years.
Well, I think it's a two-way street. It's a two-way street because as a politician you may think, okay, I will only propose something that I believe my society is willing to accept. But actually you can also shape it, and that's leadership. Well, whether you want to show a way and to, well, a way you believe in, of course. If the general message of the political class is to say, yes, innovation is crucial, basic research is crucial, the whole, well, research to innovation is absolutely crucial to our survival, then at least they make the case. They make the case to society. And society may be hard to convince, but on the other hand, society may be receptive to it. And I tend, well, in the audiences that I'm meeting, I tend to see quite receptive people. But then you have to make the case. That's one thing. Second thing is that it's not just us. It's society at large. I see that in my country, the most popular studies, higher studies, are communication, psychology, and law. Okay? Well, law and economics, but not that much of economics, actually. Well, I'm an engineer, so I see that the population is rather stable, but there's no push for this. But then again, I mean, what does society want? Do we realize, actually, that it boils down to that? Do we realize that actually, to earn a prosperous life, you need to roll up your sleeves and to work with reality? Do we realize that in Europe, or do we believe that basically prosperity is a given and so we can enjoy and do event management and communication and that kind of stuff? It boils down to that.
Thank you. We're coming towards the end. A question from the internet, and a question back there I saw. Yes. Okay.
Okay. A question from Spain, to change, from Mondragon. How do you think that the EIT and the KICs could help to get, quote, a stronger European industry for growth and economic recovery, as it is expressed in the last industrial policy communication from the European Commission?
Well, if I weren't convinced that the EIT is a perfect tool to do that, I wouldn't be here. But the interesting aspect of the EIT is that it really combines all sides of the knowledge triangle. I mean, you have really education, you have research, you have industry. You have really all three, market players. And so far, this is the only place I've seen that happening within the whole framework of the research programs of the EU. Now, it's too early to say whether really this will be the transformational tool, but I think it has a potential to be. When I see what has been achieved with the 3 existing KICs over the 18 months or 24 months of their existence, I think it is really promising. And again, this is a highly leveraged instrument compared with other parts of the framework program. So yes, I believe that this is a good instrument. And I would say that at the other end of the spectrum, you have the joint technology initiatives, which are basically, to me, another of those white elephants that we should better get rid of. So the point is, do we want to expand the EIT? I think that I think that most of the colleagues see the potential. No one of us is prepared basically to shift money away from other kinds of private-public partnerships into that kind of instrument yet. And this is where, again, looking forward, if we take another 2 years before we decide on a 5-year plan à la chinoise, well, then we will have more return of experience on the existing KICs to say, yes, we want to bet a much more significant part of the program money onto that kind of instrument. I would simply, in a spirit of simplification, also reduce the number of instruments, but the KICs and the EIT would remain a key one.
Thank you. A question back there.
I am Roger Bouillon, and I am here on behalf of the European Medical Research Council. The analysis that we made from the Horizon 2020 is that only about 11% of the budget is going to health research in the broad sense. 11%. 50% of the US public money goes to NIH and healthcare research. If there is one area where the citizen, you, me, all the citizens, feel that there is added value, that there is a need for research, then it is the health research. Why can you not convince the European Parliament and all the other decision makers to spend more, not less than 80 billion, but more specifically to address the problems that we all face with health research? And that has added value for the citizens, for the industry that moves out of Europe, for the biotech companies that are 4 times more frequent in the US than in Europe. So everybody would profit by such a decision.
Yes, our bottom line is the money which will be put together by the Council. So we cannot share more money than we have got from the Council. And we have to, achieve that there is no veto on the budget, but the Member States are voting in favour. So we cannot change the condition. But exactly this is why I'm so happy that you are here, because this is what I'd like you to put in your country and in other 27 Member States to ask us a question, because it will help us that next week we will get a better basic. Because yes, the European citizens do wish to get more Europe, do wish to get more research, do wish to get more health research, and therefore we have to provide the frame. But we can do it when we have a basic, yeah? So the bottom has to be given.
Well, I would just like to know exactly what is meant by public money, because, of course, if we compare European federal money with US federal money, we are not talking about the same thing. So what I'd like to see is a picture of the total public money spent in the US and the total public money spent in Europe. And that's where I'd like to see the comparisons before deciding, well, we are doing enough,
it's
not
very
enough.
simple. We spend in Europe €41 per year per capita for health research. The US, overall,
so regional, national,
yes, the Deutsche
European.
Forschungsgemeinschaft, Medical Research Council UK, €41 per year per person. The US, 143 per person per year. Can you imagine what the impact is on the life of the citizens, of the industry?
Thank you very much. At this point, we will close the proceedings because we said we would run till noon for those of you watching online. I wanted to hand over to James, but before doing so, I just wanted to say one thing. Philippe, you've made this point, and several other MEPs have also. I believe several have said that you'd like to see more oversight of the research and innovation spending by the Parliament in the next cycle. Why?
Well, simply, I make a comparison with what we do in monetary policy. We are talking with Mario Draghi every quarter. Now, I wouldn't go down to that, but what I realized is that for FP7, there was one rendezvous, and that was the midterm review, which was more a window dressing exercise than something else, I think. We would need, I think, to have an innovation dialogue and a research dialogue going on between the concerned committees of the European Parliament and the Commission and the Member States, I would say once a year, to really get a view, not in a micromanagement spirit, but really to get close to the ball so that when we need to reorient spending midterm, it's not a last-minute exercise. We know how things are developing and we shape our thinking as to how to steer the program.
My two last comments, apart from thanking you all very much for coming this morning. Firstly, on this one, on monitoring, it hasn't escaped many in the United Kingdom and maybe in other parts of the Union. For the 18th year running, we do not have a statement of assurance of the budget. So we're operating, particularly in the structural funds, with legality and regularity of transactions insufficiently substantiated so the Court of Auditors not give us a green bill, a green light and a clean bill of health. That is a negative if you're a net contributor to the budget to be sending more money in, because it's a very simple argument for those who oppose it. Look, you haven't even got your sort of stuff out on your current expenditures. How can you then have any more which is coming in? So if you have monitoring, we've always asked for this in the Budget Committee for several years. The spending committees in this Parliament should take more interest about the spending programmes that they have and the surveillance and the monitoring of those who are spending it. It's quite easy to set that up, but you need the political will to do so. My last point is on political will. I think that if we really wanted to make sure that this debate works, that we get what I've come from this discussion, I suppose I did believe it before I came, that we need a shift of expenditure in the budget onto things which are growth and jobs, research and innovation is right at the heart of that. If you're looking over the next 5 years, if there's one major challenge which we're going to have to resolve here in Europe and in the West as a whole, is how do we get growth back into our economies? The worst thing that we could have is a decision next week that everything continues exactly the same with no sense of priority for the next 7 years. We're into then a decade where nothing happens and there's no real visible priority. I would much rather than to have a nice process where we are going to go through this anyway. Edith, you know that well. Each political party is going to be choosing their candidate to be president of the European Commission. That particular person is going to have a programme. We're going to be discussing policy debates in the run-up and through the European elections. Then you'll have a speech from the people of what they want, and then we can implement it. But if you have that kind of debate and the people say this, and then you've already got a framework there which you can't change for the next 5 years, that will lead to huge frustrations.
Very last sentence. So we can have a priority list when we have got the money. A priority list without money has limited value. So money first, then the priority list from the Parliament and from the Commission. I think we move forward.
Okay, thank you very much all. There were additional questions that came in. We will relay them to the MEPs and we will get answers back to as many of them as we can. And we will publish those answers. There will be a report of this meeting which we will publish tomorrow morning at the latest. Thank you all and thank you to our colleagues. And James, thank you very much for hosting this.